All right.
Hi, I'm Ariel Swift. I'm here to talk about blogging bits. I'm super excited about it. Myrna is here. A couple of other people are here. If you're joining us after the fact, we might mute you, Kate. I don't know if that's what we're going to do, but my hope is to give a little bit of information and maybe make blogging feel not so scary to some folks. First off, I just wanted to share that I've been blogging since 2001, and it started way back on LiveJournal, if anyone ever used that platform. And then I moved to Blogger, and then I had some websites, and then I've been blogging for my doula business since 2011. I have a history. I have an English degree from from Western Washington University, and before I switched to English, I started my career in college as a journalism major. And what I think is kind of interesting about some of the fears that people have with blogging is coming to the understanding that there are no rules in blogging. Like, blogging is not a 5-paragraph essay where you need to have a couple of subjects and then you need to have a theme. Blogging is not something where there is a template that you follow. Some of the things that I think are curious is, like, blogging is almost closer to a newspaper article, but also it's not at the same time. Because, like, when you're writing a newspaper article, the most important bits of the information are always at the top, and it always goes from most important to least important, most important to least important, most important to least important, because the newspaper works in column inches. And so if they don't have enough room for all the things that you need, they know they can just clip the bottom off of your article and you're still going to have the most important information in that piece. But with blogging, there's 0 rules. You can do whatever you want to do. But the part that gets confusing for business owners is this term SEO, search engine optimization. And many people think that the things that they do as a blogger, that they always need to be reaching for the absolute best search engine optimization. So with that in mind, there are some rules about blogging that people say that you absolutely have to adhere to. Some of those things are using keywords. Some of those things are using long tail keywords, where it's actually a little phrase that people would commonly search in their search engine. Some people believe that there is a specific link that specifies the best type of return for the energy that you're putting out into the world. There are whole articles about the benefits of long blogs of more than 1,700 words, and there are whole sites that talk about short blogs really being the way to get going. The reason that some of these tips and tools are even out there in the universe is because of the algorithms that Google uses to give power and appreciation and search results to the blogs that are coming up. So this search engine optimization is something that is constantly changing. The rules about how to do good search engine optimization are always changing. So as a small business owner, it almost becomes like another job to keep up on what Google is doing for its analytics and what people in the industry are saying that you should do for your search engine optimization. And all of that sucks. It's overwhelming. So my hope is that with all of that information, I can give you a little bit of peace in how to just move forward, so you feel like the steps that you're taking are achievable, that blogging becomes something that isn't a task or a job, but is something that actually gives you an opportunity to share a more personal side of your business and what you're trying to put out into the world and what you offer people into a format that's much more digestible than what your website copy is. Because your website copy is very different than what your blogging copy is. The reason I speak to this is beyond being a part of Doulas of Chicago, I write for other people. I am a some people call it ghost blogging. Whatever. Like, I write things and other people put it on their website. Sometimes I write web copy for them, and sometimes I write blogs for them. So there's this idea of like your business's voice, and your copy voice is typically very different than your blogging voice, because your copy voice is something where you are trying to help people understand the services that you are offering, and it's a narrative that is both it's not a sales pitch, but it's like, these are the values that I have as a company, and are you attracted to those values? Are the things that you value listed here? And can you see yourself living in the world that I could help create as a labor or a postpartum doula? Let me share with you how to contact us. So it's like that type of speech. With blogging, it becomes more of like the day-to-day conversation that you might have with the people. So like, hey, this is a really cool idea, and let me share the information I have on that. And it's approachable. Web copy is a little bit standoffish sometimes. It can be really approachable, but oftentimes blogging is much more approachable. And then asterisks to that comment. Everyone has different opinions about what you should be using your blog on a business to do. There's typically two schools of thought about how you should put information out into the world. The first main thought is typically where people get hung up, because there's this idea of perfectionism, that you should not put a blog into the world or any piece of writing into the world until it has the best SEO, until it has the best formatting, until it has the best keywords and the most long tail keywords, and it has the right heading names, and you've picked the right title, and there are no spelling errors, and it's 300 to 500 words in length, or maybe even 500 to 700 if you really want to get into it. And all of those little things end up stopping people from even getting started, because it's so overwhelming to think about the after stuff that you can't even sit down and be like, why would people even want to hear what I have to say? I'm just a person. Why do people even care what I put on a page? Well, that's one school of thought. It has to be perfect. The other school of thought is, what's the reason that you're blogging? Is the reason that you're blogging to show Google that you exist and that your company is still active, and you want your business to show up in search engine results? Or are you blogging just because like you've been told that it's something that you need to do? So instead of perfectionism, the other thing that people are thinking of is like, I need to do it because it's what you do as a business owner. Like, I just need to put something out there, because if I want to be seen as legitimate, then I need to start blogging. Or if I want better search results, the easiest way to do that is to blog. And so I have this other goal of like just getting the information out there so that I benefit from the return result. I think there's a happy medium somewhere in there. I believe personally that perfection is going to drive you insane. It's not ever anything that we can actually achieve. Plus, the rules for SEO are changing all the time. So maybe you're doing something with an SEO rule in mind, and then all of a sudden Google's like, oh, they've figured out our SEO, so now we have to change the analytics, and we have to make it more specific, or we have to make it like more detailed. The reason Google keeps changing the analytics is because humans are smart and they know how to manipulate systems. And what Google wants is the most genuine, authentic, most helpful thing that people are looking for when they type something into the search bar to be the thing that actually shows up. So with that in mind, there is value in just showing up and producing the thing that you are producing, because when someone searches for something, then you are going to be the thing that rises to the top. But in between both of them is kind of where I think there's the happy spot. Does anyone have any specific concerns that they want to like pop into the chat window and say that they have questions about? Because I'm totally happy to answer those questions for you. So you can think about that. And while you're thinking about that, What I would like to spend a little bit of time on is how to get started, because that tends to be the biggest hang up with how to get started. And so I want to share just a couple of quick little blogging bits that might take some of the mystery out of it, and maybe give you a little bit more, not confidence, but maybe just a little bit more courage to be able to share something that you might not think other people even want to read. So when you're blogging, there are various reasons that people are going to be coming to your website. And sometimes they're looking for information. So the keyword phrases about like, how, like, do I have mastitis? Like, if you put that question in your blog somewhere, someone at some point is going to Google, what is mastitis? Or do I have mastitis? And if that phrase is in your blog, then it's considered as part of the results that Google would bring to the forefront. Most of the time, the blogs that are informational are easy to digest when you put it in a specific format. So if you're deciding to write an informational blog, making it as easy to read as possible is going to be to your benefit. So informational blogs can be something like 5 ways to prevent mastitis, or 5 things to do if you think you have mastitis, and coming up with very realistic ways to help people in that situation so that your blog has value. If it has value and it's honest and it's true, then it's possible that that person would say, yes, this is a great blog. They like it when you are sharing on social media. They may share it with a friend. They may put it in a mom group. Or they may actually just benefit from not having mastitis and think, wow, this business owner in my area actually knows what she's talking about. How cool. And so you're gaining trust with the person that you're reading, that who is reading your blog. If you make a top 10 list or a 5 list about bullshit, the benefit is that it's out into the world, but the negative consequence of bullshit is that people are going to stop paying attention to the things that you write. So I always want to encourage you to try and have accurate information in your blog, if it's an informational blog. So that's just kind of the basic overview. If it's an informational blog, you better be sharing accurate information. And one of the best ways to show people that it is accurate information is whatever site you're getting information from, you can just link it into the blog or add it at the bottom as a link, okay? Informational blogs with lists in them tend to be a very good way to get over a writing hump, because it's not something where you have to spend a lot of creative energy to come up with the idea and come up with the various different resources. Because if you're talking about something specific like mastitis, you yourself can do some research on the internet and find credible sources, and then take all of that information, curate it, and put it into a top 10 list or a top 5 list. Like, that's the benefit of blogging, is that you're collecting this information from lots of different places and making it easily digestible for the people around you. Another type of blog that many people are interested in reading are funny blogs, or blogs that have humor in them. And humorous blogs can be about whatever type of bullshit that you want. You do not have to have, it does not have to be an accurate blog in the way that you need to find credible sources and lots of links and things of that nature. So a blog about like, how many times can my shirt get spit up on before I actually have to wash it? Or how many times can this happen before I decide to, I don't know, like, we could brainstorm a couple blog ideas in a little bit. So the humorous blogs, I want to encourage you to understand that they come both from a place of like, there's like a feisty creativeness to it. So if that's not your forte, that might not be the best thing for you to blog about, but you can also use other people's humor as a way to bring humor into your blog. Again, you can curate funny things, and that's what those like top 10 parent Twitter feeds from this last week, like that's why those posts on Huffington Post are so great, because we don't have time to sort through everything on Twitter to find the 10 funniest tweets about parenthood. But the funny blogs end up bringing this type of camaraderie and like laughter, and laughter is one of the things that opens up endorphins and makes us feel good. So when people are feeling something from your blog, then they're going to have really positive associations with the source of where that feeling came from. So that's the benefit of having a humorous blog, is that you're actually forming a relationship with your audience in a way that induces endorphins. Like, it feels good for them to read your stuff. Another type of blog that many people want to write but is much more difficult are those like moving pieces about, in the doula world at least, those moving pieces about parenthood. And how do you take a moment that is possibly very, very small and intimate and bring words to it that show that you understand what it's like to be a parent. You understand, like, how much money do I give the tooth fairy? Like, what the fuck? What is that even a thing? Or the crying in the middle of the night, or sending your child to preschool, or sending your child to daycare, or the rush of feelings when you come home, or the lack of feeling, like whatever it happens to be. The blogs with personal connection take a lot of creative energy and space. So if that's something that you are trying to create and it's just not coming, most likely there is a lot of distraction in your life and a lot of stress in your life, and it's quite possible that that will take more energy for you to come up with. So if you're under a crunch or a timeline, sometimes making an energetic post like, oh my gosh, I think I'm a horrible parent, someone tell me I'm not crazy, is not necessarily going to have the best results at that moment. Let's talk a little bit about brainstorming now, about how to actually get some things down on paper. Does that sound good? Okay. I'm just looking for some feedback. Thanks, Kate. I think for some people, you're going to find a rhythm. The way that I blog may not be the way that you will blog, but I'm going to share with you a little bit of my process. And I'm going to share with you some processes of other people so that you might have a couple of ideas. One of the things that you can do that's used very, very often is a tree chart or a word association chart. And the easiest way to do that is to get a blank piece of paper and you say things like, I want to write about my baby's, like my teething, like my baby's teeth coming in. So you put teething in a bubble and then you draw a line and you just free associate words that are coming to mind with that happening. And from those free association words, maybe if you're blogging for SEO reasons, then you think of what are some key phrases that include these words that I would be able to put in and it would make sense for teething, like appropriate teethers, or pain relief options for babies, or when should I expect teeth to come in, or how does teething affect breastfeeding, or some things like that that you might be able to very easily connect a phrase to a word. Once you have a couple of word bubbles, I would suggest that you take 3 and try to put 3 of those things in your blog, and it can be any one of the 3. And at that point, looking at what you're doing, you just need to put your pen to your paper or your fingers on the keyboard, and you need to become resolute with the fact that you're going to have what Brene Brown calls a shitty first draft. You just need to put the words on your paper. You just need to start writing. And this is where the perfectionists are going to have a really, really, really hard time, because we tend to edit as we write. And if you're editing as you write, you are often disrupting the creative process. So some of you are not going to be able to just let it go and write. And I hear you and I feel for you because I am one of you. So you like write, and then you back up, and then you write some more, and then you back up and you write some more. The important thing is that you're actually writing. So just give yourself some grace and just keep going forward. If you have a friend or someone that you trust enough to show your shitty first draft to, that is a very valuable friendship to foster. So you should either read it out loud to yourself, or you should send it off to your friend and be like, is this even anything? But most likely, just knowing that you have support of someone that's not going to tell you that you're horrible is often enough to just continue to put things down on the paper. Once you have some thoughts down on the paper and you've connected using a pacifier to teething to breastfeeding and fear and, you know, when do you get to buy new clothes? Like somehow you can make all of those into a blog that someone's going to want to read. Once you have put some of that down onto a piece of paper, what I want you to do is read your blog out loud to yourself. You need to read it out loud to yourself, because usually you will find things that don't have that speaking cadence to it. And a lot of blogs that disconnect with people are because they're writing like a 5-paragraph essay and they're not writing like they speak. When you blog, you're allowed to write like you speak. You can capitalize things. You can put periods in places you're not supposed to. You can use ellipses. You can use punctuation creatively. You can do whatever you want to do because it's your blog, okay? But when you read it out loud, you will hear where you might need to make a change. And so that's a very, very helpful tool to just keep in your back pocket. Okay? Everyone good with that? Okay. If you can put something down on paper that connects a couple of words, that most of the spelling mistakes are erased, that when you read it out loud, it makes sense to you, I would encourage you to hit post. Just post it and see how it feels. Just put it out there. That's going to be really hard for some people. You can always delete it. You can always change it. You can always repost it. You can always do whatever you need to do. But oftentimes people are so afraid to hit post that they don't blog in the first place, okay? Another exercise that you can do is brainstorming with your trusted business folk, your people that are around you, and come up with an ongoing list of things that you want your company to be an expert on and that you want your company or your business to be able to represent into the world. So I would encourage you to come up with an Excel spreadsheet, or if you use like a cloud network, a place where you can post information so that you keep it. I'm a huge fan of the cloud at this point in my life. My computer was stolen and I lost a ton of stuff. So if you can keep this creative energy in a place where you know that it's safe, you can continue to foster it and you can continue to add things to it in a way that lets you, when you're in the space where you have finally devoted some time to writing a blog, that when you get there, you have the materials that are easily at your reach. So the things that you can do in this form are sort your information in a way that makes sense to you. You can sort it based on things that you are an expert at, sort it on things that you are not an expert at, blogs that you think you have to have on your website to be seen as credible, and topics that may be seasonal or burst on a calendar. Does that make sense? Things I'm an expert at that are going to be like fairly easy to just pick out. Things I'm not an expert at that I need to do a little bit of research. Okay. What was my third quadrant? Kate, did you take a note? Sorry. I lost it. I'll go back and listen to it. And then, dang it, now I'm pissed. I apologize.
Things you're an expert at, things you've got to do a little bit of research on, and things that your business, you think your business has to put out.
Yes, the blogs that you need to have to be seen as credible, right? Thank you. And then also the blogs for the seasonal calendar. Thank you. It's not bullshit, I just couldn't remember it. Thank you. The seasonal events, the seasonal ones and the ones that you're an expert on are often the ones when you're in a crunch that you can pull something up fairly quickly from. So things that you're an expert at, let's just go through some of those so you can come up with some ideas. What services do you offer? You can talk about a service. This is what we do. This is how you contact us. This is some concerns that most of our clients have about this thing. And here's how we answer those questions, and done. 500 words, no problem. Things that you're not an expert on. Oh, wait, excuse me. Calendar things. Let's go down to the other quadrant. Calendar things. Coming up, it's Halloween. What happens at Halloween? all sorts of stuff. There are costumes that happen at Halloween. There are now teal pumpkins that maybe you want to write a blog about. How do you let people in your neighborhood know that you are a safe house for people with allergies? Where did teal pumpkins come up from? What is that a thing for? Like, what types of things would you need to have at your house that are allergen free? Where do you get those things? Here are links to these different types of places where you buy those things. Pumpkins are a huge thing, but like people with young children are not going to want a small child to use a knife. So like, what are alternatives to carving pumpkins and coming up with a list of things to help them with that? You could paint pumpkins, you could put glitter on pumpkins, you could get letters and you could put letters on the pumpkins, you could stick funny things and make it into like a Mr. Potato Man pumpkin. You could go to Michael's and you could just walk around and take pictures of different things that you find there. And then in the blog, just post the pictures and say, here's some netting. Here is like a barn thing that you could put on here. So you could just give them idea based on the holiday event. Every single day in the calendar, there are also like National Day of Chocolate Lovers or whatever the fuck. You can write a blog based on what the national day is. And you could say, did you know that this is a thing? And here are the local businesses in our area that would support this. Or I'm a huge fan of donuts. I love donuts. For a while, I contemplated my name being the Donut Doula, but then it was a very short period of time where I thought that would be a good name. And then it went away, but it was there for a minute. Being able to write things that would support one of those national days can also be helpful. There are, especially coming into this season right now, there are a lot of holidays coming up. With holidays, there tend to be traditions. So what's your family tradition? And you could invite your readers to share their family tradition. What is something that you love about the holiday? Do you have a favorite Christmas carol or a favorite song? Some people have taken and been so creative and they've like written lyrics to songs that have to do with being a parent. So you could do something like that. The brainstorming process is one where any option is a good option. So put all of those options into this list that you're making. Do not edit the brainstorming process. Every choice, everything that you're coming up with is a great option because you don't know when you start doing those word associations, what you're going to associate with that. You could make it a funny blog. You could make it an emotional blog. You could make it an informational blog, but you're not quite sure what that's going to be until you go through some of this other process. The things that you think, so now the other quadrants, the ones that might take a little bit of work. The things that you are not an expert at, but you want to know more about would be something that would still be fairly energizing for you as a writer, because typically when you're curious about a topic, you have the energy to put into it to be able to make it interesting. The things that you're curious about are probably things that your reader is curious about. So pay attention to the things that you are Googling, because those would be some of the key phrases that you should put into your blog. The same in that line about keyword phrases, here's just a little trick. When you put a phrase into Google and it has a search result, if you scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, there's going to be like 4 or 5 other search terms. Those are also other things that you would be able to put into your blog that would associate with that, or possibly those search terms are terms that would spark another creative idea for you. Okie dokie. And then the last quadrant over here, things that you think your business needs to have as a blog as just like a core blog that oftentimes are very draining to sit down and think about adding into your blog repertoire. Like, what is a doula? And what's the difference between a postpartum doula and a night nanny? Like, it may not be a difficult thing to come up with the reasons, but it may be a difficult blog to do it in a way that's what you think new or refreshing or encouraging. And I just want you to know that sometimes it's not about always having the newest and most refreshing blog if the goal is to fulfill this niche that your current business blog doesn't have. So I'm going to say you may not even need that quadrant of information. if you're blogging often enough and the other things that you're covering are taking care of that for you, or who says you even need them in the first place? And if you're like, I do, I say I need them, then that becomes something where you want to make sure that you have, you're in a good mindset so that any negativity that you're feeling about like needing to write this blog doesn't keep you from finishing it. There's a lot of blogs that just turn out and start as drafts that you work a little bit on it and you're like, I need to walk away. And then you walk away and you come back to it when maybe you have 15 or 20 minutes of free time. And you're like, okay, I think I can add another paragraph now. I've read this. Yep, that makes sense. Here, let me add a little bit more, and then hit save, and then you can walk away again. So those are some of the tools that I use when I'm writing a book. Okay, so I have these 4 different categories that I can look at. The other thing that I really want to encourage you with is your own personal stories. Like, your personal story as a human existing in the world has value. And we have a lot of shame over our personal experiences. And it's very vulnerable to share something that has happened in your life publicly with people. So oftentimes that might make people pause and not want to share a personal story. But I want to encourage you that there's a way to be vulnerable without oversharing details and without making it a journal entry about something that's going on. And it's a technique that's used in storytelling very often, and it's a technique that's used in public speaking very often. And it's usually this zoom out, zoom in technique. Zoom out and zoom in. So if you have an experience as a parent that you want to write about, or you have something that happened with someone in your family that you want to write about, there are 2 elements that you need for it to be, well, I'm going to back up because you don't actually need it, but there are 2 elements that you could consider that might help you when you're trying to figure out how to do this type of storytelling. And it's a small, small detail about that story, and then a much, 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 much bigger idea that's so big that it could actually apply to many different situations, huge situations, and tiny, tiny, small elements. And I'll give you an example. I'll also move my cat just a moment. I wrote a blog that was published on Huffington Post called Parenting in a Harvey Weinstein World. And the small event that inspired this post was my daughter cutting her own hair in the basement. And I found it, and it was the conversation that I had with her. That was the small event that happened, and I chose to share that with the community. The bigger event that was on that blog post was women having ownership over themselves and not being worried about how they present themselves in the world and having that line up with someone else's idea of where their importance comes from. Huge idea, right? Gigantic. Small thing, my daughter cut her own hair. Huge thing, women are objects in the world. Often you're able to find things in the big topic as you're writing about things that you believe and the values that you hold as a company, or fears that you have about that thing, or ideologies. Like, you can usually get a lot of words about this big topic. And then when you zoom into the small topic and you say, when I'm thinking about all of these things and all of the worries I have as a parent and all of the concerns that I need to take into account, and I look at my small child and she just cut her hair off, how can I help her understand that she gets to make choices? And so how do I respond in this one tiny situation? And usually that struggle between the huge and the little is what brings the audience in. And it's usually what makes the audience pay attention to the thing that you're working on. So that might take a little bit of practice, but this zoom out and zoom in lens focusing of where you're bringing your reader's attention to it's used in audio storytelling. It's used in so many things. So when you change the tempo and you change the cadence of where your readers are coming from or going to, it snaps them out of that lull of what is going on in their mind. So it's good for storytelling. It's good for gathering information so you have more data to kind of plug into your blog. And it it's a good read. It just makes sense. It's just like, oh yeah, I don't really need to hear about how this little girl cut her hair, but I like trying to figure out how that very real situation also connects to this other bigger thing, or it is a fear of mine that my own child is going to cut her own hair, and how do I want to react to that? And I get to choose how I react to that. And wow, parenting is really hard, and why do I have to be responsible for all of these micro things that happen? And like, you could choose to take that conversation wherever you want it to go, but the gist of my spiel at this little point is just this zoom out, zoom in. Does anyone have questions about that? Okay. Those blogs, the zoom out, zoom in blogs, for me, I have a very creative time during the day, and I have other times of the day where I am not able to produce very much information. Writing is a creative process. Putting words on a piece of paper or on a computer screen is a process that allows our brain to think about things differently. So you may have an idea of where you want your blog to go, and sometimes you can follow that idea very succinctly. But oftentimes you might be surprised that your brain might take you somewhere where you weren't planning to go. And that switch in understanding, or that switch in where you are placing your focus, I want you to pay attention to that too, because that's actually a very natural and healing thing that our brains are able to, they're able to organize information differently when you go from an idea to a word. It's using a different part of the brain. I am through all of the information that I wanted to share today. But I realize that some people might be like, so at this point, is there anyone that's like, nope, I need more about this, or I need more information on how to get started, or I don't feel like I'm there yet, or you have a fear, or you have something.
I just want to share that, like, you blew my mind by saying I could post something and delete it later. That has never occurred to me. And I have probably 50 or more blogs that are sitting unfinished in my website because it's never occurred to me that if I decide I don't like it, I can just take it down later.
Yeah, what's it gonna, I mean,
so great.
Yeah, there's no, again, there's no rules with blogging. Yeah. There's a lot of, do you feel your office space in general makes a difference in creativity? For me, I have learned that it's more about time of day. I now know that I am better at writing very late at night and very early in the morning. And in between, it gets a little iffy because the rest of the day has taken over my bandwidth. So that may not be when you write, but there's going to be some trial and error about finding your creative period of time. So I believe that my office space does matter. However, I prefer my space to be very cleared off. If I don't have a cleared off space and it's cluttered, my brain doesn't work right. So wherever I do happen to be writing, if it's in my bedroom and I'm on my laptop, like, there can't be a lot of shit everywhere. The shit that I bring to that creative session is different than the shit that just exists naturally. So like, I'm gonna bring the book that I got that really great quote from, or my my notebook where I keep information, or sometimes I have my Pinterest board for quotes is a place that I might scroll through and just get into the vibe of like, yes, power, women, birth, awesome, and like kind of zhuzhing myself up a little bit before I start writing. Sometimes kind of being my own hype girl is helpful before I get into the zone. Anybody else? I also want you to know that good is good enough. It does not have to be perfect. It does not have to be great. It does not have to be spectacular. Good is good enough. Okay. Does anyone else have a question? Yeah, you guys, your voices are so powerful. You don't even know. There are going to be people who will read things and they will never come forward and share how it impacted them. It's an exercise in vulnerability. It's an exercise in showing up. And blogging happens for many different reasons. And I think before you sit down and you put something on the page, if you can pinpoint why you're there at that moment, it might relieve some of the stress for you about what you need to produce. If you have something in you that needs to get out, then that's a really creative energy. So get it out. Just get it out. If you have something that you need to put on the page because you have a schedule and it needs to be done because it's really important for you to get things off your to-do list, then that's a very different energy. So being mindful of how you come into that space might help you to unblock some of the things that keep you from participating. Okay? So I'm going to leave you with that. I'm available a lot of the time. So if you have questions, I'm always available. You can email me at ariel@doulasofchicago.com, and I'm happy to help. You can contact me on Facebook, and I'm happy to help there. But I'm going to let you go, and we'll talk to you later, okay?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye, everybody.
Bye.